Advent is, in my mind, it's an exercise in resistance.
Mm.
So I had, it's always, I get a little nervous asking my kids about things that I teach other families about. But I asked Silas, what's Advent? What is Advent? And his first answer was, it's a 4 candle countdown to Christmas, which I was like, that's very cute. It's close. Points, a couple points there. But then, kept asking him some questions about why we celebrate Advent, what's it for? And he said this. So this is 10 years old. And it's pretty profound. He said, Advent helps us worship the real God, Jesus, not the God of Christmas. And he put him in air quotes like that, not the God of Christmas. And I was like, dude, that's pretty profound. Where did you get that from? And he said, from my brain. But he's right, because here's what happens. I think our culture, right? Christmas and the Christmas shopping season, everything from Black Friday on, becomes kind of like its own religion, right? It demands our time, our energy, our money, our brain space. And so in December, we get into this trap where we trade real, beautiful things like simplicity and contentment. We trade that for these sort of more performative experiences of generosity and joy and joy. Right? And so for me, it's like, it's the difference between trading like a beautiful organic heirloom tomato from the farmer's market for like one of those guys you get at the supermarket, right?
Yeah.
And so I think for our kids, I think we can talk about what it means to follow Jesus in this cultural moment. Advent is just one way that we are different from the world around us, because following Jesus in this moment, we're going to look like weirdos most of the time. And so actually Advent becomes this place where we're teaching our kids what it means to trade what's normal, this side, this tomato, to trade what's normal for something much better. Yeah.
That's so good. That's so good. You know what? And I kind of, Sarah, I have a little bit of a revelation right now, which is, I probably shouldn't have this revelation this far in my life, but I did. And that's that Advent is also like a time of year when we give our kids, especially maybe, permission to say their hurts and their longings and what's not right. Right. And so it's normative that everything isn't okay sometimes. But it will be. And it's like that, because I think so many times our kids too are like, they feel like they need to put on a certain mask, right? Or everything's okay. And it's like a time, and you talking like had me think about this, of like, it is a time where we can give them permission to say all of their hurts and their pains and their longings and give them to Jesus. Right.
So, and if on Christmas is a celebratory, appropriately celebratory moment. But there's a way that sort of leaning into the cultural celebration of Christmas, it can lead us to put on sort of a fake jolly thing that isn't real joy. So real joy is not antithetical to suffering, right? Real joy can happen in the midst of suffering. But if we extend this, jolly celebration for 25 days without addressing, well, why is this gift good? What are we celebrating? We're celebrating that our every pain that we have, every longing that we have is met in Jesus. And so, Advent gives us space for that.
That's good. Yeah. Okay. So Jeremiah is asking a question, Sarah, which is, how are you able to balance the social pressure to premature celebration with helping kids develop a sense of waiting? Because there is, right? Like there is that pressure to jump.
Great question. So I think I would distinguish, so people can do this very differently, right? So how we interact in our home, what we do in our home, we really try to put Advent in its place and put Christmas in its place. We are not as extreme as my family that had no Christmas music, and yet we keep the focus on the waiting. How we interact in the world, so people would have different approaches to this, right? So maybe You would decide, for the sake of teaching my kids, they're not going to participate in premature celebrations. The way we do it is
Mhm.
out in the world, we allow them to participate in the world's celebrations. But as you can tell, Silas has noticed something about the difference
Mhm.
between what happens out there and what we're doing here. And I think that's key, is that we have a framework and a way to help them process what's the difference between celebrating Christmas for 25 days and shopping for 25 days and gifts for 25 days and putting that in its proper place. The other thing, this is like, it's up here, it's a high bar, but there's a spiritual discipline of waiting where you actually, for a season, and Advent is a great time to practice this. You could do it with your kids, where you actually do things like when you're in the grocery store, you choose the longest line. When you're on the highway, you drive the speed limit in the right lane. um, and when you're sitting anywhere, you actually decide, I'm not going to be on my phone. I'm just going to sit in the waiting. So that's like, that's kind of an intense practice, but I wonder if there are ways to do that with kids, and to talk about what it feels like to wait, and to remind them that, yeah, we're waiting for Jesus to come back. So again, I sort of would say to that question, it's a both and I think how you celebrate in your home, um, will contrast pretty significantly if you celebrate Advent with what's happening.
What are some of your favorite practices and resources that you could share to help us dive into Advent with our kids?
Awesome. Yes, this is what I was
Yeah.
waiting for. So here, so I'm going to it's sort of show and tell. I have a bunch of things to show you. So my favorite things to do, first of all, baseline practice is the use of an Advent wreath. So I don't know if you can see this.
Mhm. Yeah.
So an Advent wreath just has 4 candles. People who are even more Advent purists than me would say these candles should not be white. They should be purple and pink. Sometimes I use ribbon to put those colors in there, but at the very basic, you just need 4 candles and some greens. And so I think it's helpful to pick a time of day. I love the dinner table for this, but you could do it at bedtime, to light the Advent wreath every day and to use a devotional that goes with the Advent wreath. So I'll recommend this one. This is by Tish Oxenrider, Shadow and Light. And I think this one is very good. It is a little long if you have little kids. So I will say that. And so I actually wrote my own little family devotional with tiny kids in mind. It takes about 2 minutes to get through each day. And this you can download for free on my website. So I can have a link for that perhaps. So baseline, I would say use an Advent wreath and a devotional. Another practice is the practice of using an Advent calendar. So you can find, the ones that are sort of cardboard and they have little windows that you open and there's scripture behind the windows. If you're going to use one that has scripture, I would recommend that you look for one where the scripture references aren't all from the Christmas narrative. And so I would say that the sacramental stream does it better. So Catholic resources or mainline resources tend to have more scripture that goes with the idea of waiting and Jesus' return, things like that. The other type of Advent calendar is one of these pocket calendars. So it's got a little pocket for every day, and you can put a little treat in there. So if you use this, on my website, I have a little free printable, and what that is this little card that goes in each day that has a scripture on the back of it, and that matches up with the scripture in the family devotional for that day. And so what we do in our home is I put this in here with a little chocolate treat, and kids have to look up the Bible verse in a real Bible and find the verse in the Bible and read it, and then they get the treat. And so we do that every day as well. And then lastly, and then I'll share some books. But the last sort of tool is something called a Jesse tree. So this is a really wonderful practice, especially for slightly older kids. So every day there's a different ornament that goes with a Bible story. And so you pull out the ornament, you read the Bible story, and the Bible stories trace the entire redemptive narrative from Genesis to Jesus. It's really this beautiful tradition. And so if you look on Etsy, you can find lots of examples. I would say look for one with an accompanying book that has the scriptures in it to make it easy for you. And there's a link, I think, on this QR code to one that I recommend. But even better, so this year I had a targeted Instagram ad come my way. And usually, that can be like hit or miss. But this year I found these. I don't know if you can see these behind me. I'm going to get up in a second and show you, but I have these Advent blocks behind me. And this is a version of a Jesse tree that somebody has made with blocks. So I'm going to go grab them and show you what it is. So there's 25 numbered blocks, and there's this star block that sits on top of the date. So on December 1st, you flip the number to show a little symbol, and this goes with the Bible story. So this is the garden narrative. So then you move the star along to day 2, and day 2 is Noah. You read the Noah narrative. So anyway, you move the star all the way along this row until you get to the very end, and the last day, it's the world. So it's like the light of Christ has come into the world. So I feel like that's just fantastic. It is biblical, it's sensory, it's fun. And so I'm really excited about that. And yeah, so those are some tools to sort of practice and celebrate Advent with kids. Here's some book recommendations for you and one for families. So this book, sorry, hold on. There we go. Okay. This is Living the Christian Year by Bobby Gross. So if you are new to liturgical practice, new to Advent, this book talks about all the seasons of the church year. So it's got a section on Lent and all the things from just such an accessible perspective. So if you're brand new to the church calendar and the church year, I would highly recommend this book. Here's another adult devotional that I love for Advent. This is, I took the book jacket off, but Waiting for the Light. This has daily Advent readings by a number of well-known Christian writers, C.S. Lewis, Madeline L'Engle, Henry Nouwen. It's fabulous, one reading a day. And then for families, so this book is really, really interesting. It's called All Creation Waits. This is a version for adults or for older kids, and then there is a children's edition of this book as well. But this book, so my caveat with this is you have to read the introduction for it to make sense. But this is Gail Boss, and she talks about how animals in the Northern Hemisphere teach us about Advent and how they prepare for winter, because the unique thing about the Northern Hemisphere is we are our sort of celebration of darkness and light, longing for the light, that coincides with what's happening with the sunshine. The solstice is right before Christmas. And so she takes 25 different Northern Hemisphere animals and talks about how their preparation for winter just demonstrates the way that all of creation is acting out the longing for light. And it's really, I think it's really brilliant and beautiful. So those are some of my, my favorite Advent resources and books.